Rob Law MBE is the founder and CEO of Trunki, the brand behind the much-loved ride-on suitcase for tots. His entrepreneurial journey has taken him from one of the most famous rejections on Dragon's Den in 2006 to successfully building a team who have pioneered a new retail category of children's travel products. Since Trunki launched in May 2006, the company has sold 4 million suitcases in over 100 countries, with consumers spending over $200 million on his brand. Rob's entrepreneurial journey has seen him awarded an MBE for services to business, as well as 120 awards, including reaching 42nd on the Sunday Times Fast Track 100 and winning the National Business Awards SME of the Year. Rob, that is quite the introduction. The expectations have just gone through the roof. Hello and welcome to Talk Business with Rob.
Hi David, delighted to be here.
Oh, thank you so much. I can't believe that you've not got one of your 140 certificates on the wall somewhere at the back there, Rob. You've hidden them all away. Rob, as someone that was born with cystic fibrosis, you were told that you were unlikely to live into your 20s, and having already lost your sister, your twin sister Kate, at 16, how much of a motivation has this been for you to make a success of your life?
Well, I guess that's probably the biggest insight into my journey, probably that one event.
Yeah.
Losing my twin sister to the same disease that I was born with kind of gave me a very early lesson in life that you can either choose to wallow in self-pity and wait for the world to get hold of you, or you can choose life and go out and make the most of it yourself. So blessed, I guess, to some extent with that insight at the age of just 16. I chose the latter and went off and said yes a lot more than I ever said no.
Yeah. Tell us about some of those things that you've said yes to. Anybody that's read your book, Rob, will be amazed at the challenges that you've overcome and your attitude towards life. Tell us about some of those things that you've done.
So, I guess some of the big challenges I've had in the Trunki kind of phase of life have been around people just not getting the product. So I tried to license Trunki years ago to toy companies who told me I'd invented a piece of luggage, and luggage companies told me I'd invented a toy. So yeah, trying to get Trunki off the ground took 7 years, I think. And then when I did, there were a number of hurdles and challenges I came across, such as hand luggage ban at the height of the terrorist threats, a famous episode of BBC Dragon's Den, all the way through to being copied a lot once you become successful. So those are quite a lot of the challenges I've had to overcome. But I guess the greatest challenge personally I overcame was spending most of my adult life thinking I couldn't become a father due to complications with cystic fibrosis.
Yeah.
But now I'm a father of 3 great young children.
Yeah. Rob, as we hear your story today, something that will stand out for everyone listening is just how much you have had to overcome both personally and professionally. Talk us again through that mindset when something goes wrong. What is your approach in turning it around?
I think having so many challenges to overcome in early life, I kind of accepted challenges were going to come my way, and you'd never go through a spell where there wouldn't be any challenges ever. Yeah. So it was kind of half expecting things to go get thrown a curveball. And I guess some of the skills I use is recognizing that whatever that curveball is, it's only going to be around for a finite period of time. So you will be able to overcome it if you have the stamina to get through, and to conserve that stamina and conserve your energy. You've got to choose the battles you can fight and try not to lose energy on the ones you can't. So think very carefully about what you can influence and what you can't, and choose to spend your energy on the things that you can influence, and try not to waste any or drain any energy on the big things that you just cannot influence at all.
Yeah, so good. And you've also got this approach, haven't you, where you always consider worst case scenario. I thought that was brilliant and a real insight in your book. Tell us a little bit about that, Rob.
Well, I guess when you're planning a big next step, it's just kind of game playing the various scenarios that could come out, and always sense checking what that kind of worst possible outcome could be, and just building a bit of an arsenal to try and protect you from that worst case position. Yeah. But because you've game played it a little bit, you're slightly more prepared for it should it come.
Yeah, sure. What did life look like pre-Trunki, and how did you come up with the idea?
Trunki actually came to me while I was at university in 1997, studying product design. So pre that inception, I was 19 years old. So I actually probably a big turning point for me was when I was about 14, and I decided I wanted to become a product designer. Having CF, I knew from a very early age that I couldn't become an astronaut or a soldier or all those kind of dreams you have as a young child. So I had to become a bit more realistic about what I could do from probably an earlier age than most. And I was also diagnosed with dyslexia at school and really struggled with some of the traditional English-based classes. So I found I had a flair for creativity and tried to explore that, but it's quite limited within school. You had graphic design and CDT, craft design and technology, woodwork, and those were your only two options. And they didn't really do it for me. They were good fun to do, but they weren't really what my passion was. So I had to find something I was really passionate about. And a fairly unknown career back then was product design or industrial design, which is now fairly well common, thanks to the likes of Jonathan Ives of Apple fame. Yeah. But yeah, discovering that discipline and falling in love with it, I was then able to focus on getting to the best university that I could in the land to study this. And that's what took me to Northumbria.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's kind of taking me there and coming up with the idea. It was a national luggage design competition, and we entered as a second-year class of students along with universities up and down the land, and went along to a local department store, Phoenix in Eldon Square, if anyone's familiar with Newcastle, looking at the luggage section, trying to find some inspiration. And it was all kind of black and boring. Hard-moulded suitcases were quite fashionable back in the 90s, and that was one of the core things we were learning as product design students is how to mold and make things in plastic. So I took that of some note, but got kind of lost inspiration amongst the darkness of the luggage section and drifted off into the kids' toy section. Maybe it's because I'm a big kid at heart, but I distinctly remember stood looking at the ride-on toys, remembering how much my younger brother used to love relentlessly riding his ride-on tractor around the garden. And actually these toys are manufactured using a different technique that wastes a lot of space, and you have a little seat that you can lift up with enough space for, say, an apple or two. And actually, if the luggage industry was going down the hard molded way of doing things, I thought, why not combine the two and make a ride-on toy that functioned primarily as a piece of luggage, maximising that internal storage space, but could be fun for kids to ride on. And I travelled a fair amount and knew that kids got bored in airports, not being a father myself back then.
Yeah. That's so good, isn't it? And anybody listening to this right now, I reckon it's probably, I mean, obviously we're recording this in the COVID lockdown, so not many people are going to airports at the moment, but I'd imagine it's probably impossible to go to an airport anywhere now and not see a Trunki, right? It's just become part of the furniture at any airport.
It's amazing how they've transcended international barriers and boundaries and have been very popular all over the world. Yeah, it's hugely exciting.
In case anyone listening hasn't actually seen a Trunki, you've done an amazing job of making sure that your back wall is packed with some amazing examples of them today, Rob. But just tell us briefly what it is.
Well, it's a brightly coloured plastic suitcase that enables a child to ride their own luggage, not only just pack it. And that kind of really is very beneficial from an air travel point of view when you're travelling through the airport from check-in to departure gate, and the parent can actually tow them along with the tow strap as well. Yeah, but it's a great vehicle just to explore imaginary play at home and pretending to go on holiday. Just kids end up becoming kind of besotted with them because they're slightly animalistic, so they become their very own sort of pet to look after. Yeah. And what a great pet to take on you on all your adventures, whether it be imaginary or real. Yeah. You mentioned the COVID era. One of the greatest pieces of delight I got in the last 12 months was when lockdown eased the first time and people were able to go off and visit their grandparents and their family. And we got so many amazing photos of parents sending in that magical moment on the doorstep of visiting the grandparents. And so the Trunki's just there kind of for the pre-teen years, really.
Yeah. Amazing. How does that feel even now, Rob? I mean, you've sold so many of these. How does it feel when you're, just walking along minding your own business and you see somebody using one of the products that you've designed? Do you still get a buzz from that?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And what's really nice now I've got young kids who are all in the Trunki kind of age range, seeing their reaction to seeing the Trunkies now, and embarrassingly quite often going up to strangers and telling them their dad designed or made the Trunki. They still think I made them by hand, but it's really nice.
Yeah. The Dragon's Den would have been the first time a lot of people saw the Trunki for the first time, but it actually had a story before this with lots of sales already in the bag. Tell us about that, Rob.
Well, I eventually managed to find a manufacturer to take Trunki on, and they were a startup toy company. This was back in 2006. And after so many rejections and being turned away by so many manufacturers, I was really excited to meet someone who saw the potential in the product. So we quickly signed a global licensing deal, and they took my design and manufactured it in China. And I was hoping to retire young and sip cocktails on a beach somewhere. That never quite materialized, but over the 3-year period they did have Trunki for, they sold about 20,000 units, primarily to a company in the Middle East who have a brand called Fula, which is the equivalent of Barbie, but Barbie doesn't sell too well because of the cultural differences in the Middle East, so they created their own brand and they called it the Fula Trunki travel case. It was really exciting to start with because actually they created a TV ad that aired across the Middle East. But looking back at it, it was just a child playing in their bedroom. There was no real push on air travel. And because they were primarily a toy company, they were just selling it alongside other cheaper ride-on toys. So the company I'd licensed it to kind of really struggled to make much traction with it because they were a pure play toy company and were really struggling to position it in the market.
Yeah.
So I decided I then took a phone call from them after 3 years, really frustrated by the lack of success. And actually, they'd only really sold this product in the Middle East, so it had never been in the UK or to Europe or the US or any of these big markets. And they ended up going into liquidation due to several challenges they were facing. And within a matter of moments, I decided, actually, I'll try and take that on myself, the product, because I'd been working as a design consultant, working for some large FMCG brands, trying to reimagine the future for some of these big brands. But it was kind of creating products that consumers don't really need. It was just more of the same kind of stuff, that single-use plastics, all this kind of stuff. And I was really struggling to get out of bed because I'm a real passionate believer about creating products that improve and enable people's lives. So frustrated by my experience of lack of success on the licensing front, I thought, well, to me, Trunki is a lifestyle brand, and maybe the luggage and toy manufacturers are right. It is neither. It's an all-encompassing lifestyle brand that needs to be completely repositioned to be successful in the market. Yeah. And I decided to take that mantle on back in October 2005, and then pretty much 6 months later, relaunched Trunki in the UK.
Yeah. And then mololoco.com then feature the Trunki. Orders from around the world then come streaming in. And for anyone that has read your book, it's at this stage where everyone finds himself cheering you on, Rob, to then you discover the Trunki sneezes. Tell us about that.
Well, yeah, the website you mentioned there is a design blog. And back when I was a product design consultant, I had time to read these design blogs. Yeah. This was my favorite one. And I just thought one day, why not send them a press release just mentioning Trunki? I think it was even before Trunki arrived in the UK, still just going through the final steps of manufacture. And to my delight, they posted it online, and I was really chuffed. My design peers were really chuffed, and that kind of really ticked a bucket list thing off for me. But then I opened my laptop when I got home from work, and crazy web stats, full inbox, and my first international customer came through that, which was the Museum of Modern Art in New York. So I sold 600 Trunkis to them, and that was a really sort of turning point on going international, pretty much before we even started selling in the UK.
Yeah, amazing. And was it at that point that you developed the Trunki sneezes?
Yes, the first container that arrived in the UK, none of the high street would take Trunki. Again, the luggage buyer said to see the toy buyer, see the apparel buyer, just getting passed around. So it was literally just my own website, which back in 2006 had to be custom coded to be an e-commerce site, and a couple of local retailers So there weren't very big volume of sales in those very first couple of weeks, but I did start getting some irate customers contacting me and saying, when my child sits on the trunkie, the catches pop open. And what had happened in the rush to get the product into production, because of the company that went bust, the factory that they'd been using in China went bust. We had to then find a new factory in China, rush production to get set up. And in that rush, everything on the trunkie is made of plastic, apart from these little metal clasps in the original trunkie, which fold over center to lock the catches. 1 millimeter's difference was the difference between having happy customers and having irate, angry customers. But faced with that kind of challenge, I thought, well, I'll use a bit of humour to try and overcome their adversity and anger. And I said, it sounds like the trunkies have caught the sneezes on the high seas. Fear not, I'll come back to you with a remedy. And very quickly got the correct catches made to spec, FedExed over, and started sending out the catches to customers to actually fit themselves with a how to run a trunkie ER help sheet. So that was a really powerful learning in the power of good customer service. Yeah. And also you've got to take your mind back to 15 years ago, when if you had a problem if you needed to contact customer service, you kind of phoned them up with gritted teeth, expecting to have a fight. Yeah. So actually a lot of customers were very happy to hear someone who was willing and able to listen to them and to try and find their solution.
Yeah. And was this the time when you guys ended up working over a weekend and working ridiculous hours trying to fix all the ones that you had yourself by hand?
Yeah, all down in the warehouse. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, fun hours spent down there.
How did the idea of going on Dragon's Den come about, and talk us through that process?
Well, I actually qualified for a Prince's Trust enterprising program back in 2002. And it was my Prince's Trust mentor who many years later contacted me out of the blue saying, I've just met some researchers for BBC's Dragon's Den. Would you be interested in their contact details? Now, I'd only just seen season 1 because this was still in the early days of Dragon's Den, but was besotted by the program and thought it was great telly. So again, within a matter of moments, it was like, yep, I want to be on Dragon's Den. I haven't got any cash. I don't have any business training, so could do with some more mentoring, and a bit of marketing exposure would certainly be nice. Well, I got one of those things for sure. So I wrote the researchers an email with the titles called, subject title was Dragon's Ride on Trunkie, and I was then quickly rushed through production and screen tests and things, and appeared on season 3 back in 2006.
Just walk us through what that experience is actually like. I mean, for anybody, and I know you're not going to be able to spend much time on this, Rob, and for anybody that hasn't got Rob's book or hasn't read Rob's book, this chapter alone just makes you, the way that you've written it, Rob, it just makes you feel like you've experienced it with you. You've just done such a great job, and well done for that. But just talk us through the sort of milestone memories that you have of actually walking, as the elevator doors open and you walk through to see the dragons, and sort of talk us through that experience and what sort of stands out even to today.
Yeah, well, back in season 3, it actually was an old warehouse, not Pinewood Studios, and you did walk up some rickety stairs to the top. But I was very confident. I knew I had a great product. I'd done some research, and Richard Farley was my target because he had toddlers. So yeah, I went up there a little bit nervous, but still quite confident, and pitch went almost perfectly. Towed Richard Farley around the studio on it, using the tow strap, strong enough to pull him. And then Theo got hold of the product, and as we all now know, he likes to strength test things, and he kind of noticed if you pull the tow strap really hard, the hook, plastic hook, held it on, bends a bit. So he pulled it as hard as he could. And that was a big turning point in the den, where everything that had been going my way quickly reversed, and everything just spiraled out of control. And no matter how hard I tried to argue my case, the dragons just didn't want to hear it. Richard, who kept quiet throughout this, after all 4 of the other dragons had gone out, saw a great opportunity to get a very good deal for himself, and he offered me £100,000 for half my business, but there was no way I could go to that after my opening bat was just 10%. Yeah. So I ended up leaving the den empty-handed, and that descent from the top of the stairs to the bottom was from kind of gutted that I didn't get a deal away to getting to the bottom of the steps. Oh my God, this is going to go on national telly, and I'll probably ruin my business through what's just been recorded.
Yeah. You did actually get a deal, though. Am I right in thinking that Richard actually ended up buying one of your trunkies and he sent you a check? Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. So just before I left to go down the stairs, I thought, well, I might as well get something out of this. And I offered Richard a Dragon's Den discount, and he bought 2 trunkies off me and posted me a Coots check from Monaco.
Was you able to watch the episode back when it aired on TV? And what happened straight after?
Yeah, I got a few family and friends round to watch the episode when it aired, and had the laptop open to check the web stats, kind of expecting that I wouldn't sell a trunkie because this was going to be proper car crash telly. I posted a survey up online to get people's feedback on what they thought of the brand and the product. So I thought at least I'll get something from this experience. But within a matter of moments, the web stats were going crazy. Loads of people were filling in the online survey, but more importantly, people were buying the product. We actually sold out that night. And although I found it horrific to watch myself back on telly and picking up on some small points that I was really gutted I said on telly, no one picked up on it at all. Yeah. They all thought it was a great product. And we almost went from completely unrecognised product in the country to a brand that was being talked around various coffee machines up and down the country, even with people who didn't have kids were talking about Trunki. Yeah. So it was a great accelerator of brand awareness for sure.
And what about for yourself, Rob? Because this is a program that has huge exposure across the country. What was that fame like straight after? I mean, was it to the point where if you'd pop into Sainsbury's, people would be wanting to have selfies with you? Was it that kind of fame, or was you able to get about your business without being interrupted too much after it?
Oh yeah, no, completely off the radar. People recognised the product, didn't recognise me, but that was never my intention. So no, it's actually funny. We did quite a few what were called the baby shows. So you go to Earl's Court or the NEC or Olympia, where 10,000 pregnant mums would be walking through the doors and various baby brands would be there. So we had, in the early days, we had a lot of contact with consumers, and quite often people would recognise it from Dragon's Den. Some people thought it was on The Apprentice. They'd be getting confused between Dragon's Den and The Apprentice because they're both business shows. Yeah. But all in all, yeah, lots of people recognised the product from the show.
So if you was wired different, Rob, and you wanted all of that fame, you'd have actually have walked around with one of your trunkies under your arm. Many people at this point may have given up, but here you are, sleeves rolled up, to then get the news that all hand luggage was about to be banned. But before you tell us about that, let's quickly go to our sponsor. We are here with the awesome founder and CEO of Trunki, Rob Law. Before the break, you were just about to tell us the unbelievable story about the hand luggage ban.
Yeah, so we picked up on the Trunki sneezers before, but literally I just finished putting my tools down, fixing all these Trunkies, over 1,500 of them in the warehouse, making sure the right catches were on. Got home, sat down in front of the telly. It was, I think, the German World Cup was on. It was around about the 9 o'clock news time. So I was interested to see how we'd done in the football, but I was going to sit through the news, sat down with my flatmates at the time, and was about to tuck into some sweet and sour chicken, I think, when the presenter came on and said that the government or the secret services have foiled a big threat to blow up planes across the Atlantic, called the liquid bomb threat. And that all sounded very reassuring until the next words that came out of his mouth was, and now the government have decided to ban hand luggage as a precaution. Hold on, rewind a sec. What did he just say? And yeah, as a result, we probably all remember now the pivoting point of having to put all your liquids into plastic bags was this incident. But for a number of weeks, hand luggage in its totality was banned. So you couldn't take hand luggage on a plane. And I just launched a children's hand luggage business. Yeah. So this was one of my earlier learnings on trying to focus your energy on the things that you can control and not the things you can't. So quickly realized that the Department for Trade and Industry didn't want to hear from me. Virgin didn't want to hear from me. Heathrow didn't want to hear from me. I wasn't going to be able to influence when this hand luggage ban was going to be raised. So I had to focus my energy on how I could weather that storm. And that was around conserving cash initially, talking about staycations and using trunkies for home travel. But also this really only affected the UK and the US. So then looking at the global market and focusing in on the likes of Australia and Japan and other countries.
You've been successful in getting the Trunki on sale in some huge retailers, including John Lewis. What advice would you have for any business owners wanting to go down the same route?
I think that advice has probably changed a bit over the last 12 months with the huge boom in e-commerce. I mean, prior to that, there are a lot of D2C brands selling direct to consumers. And England, or Britain, sorry, is a bit of a pioneer in that area, along with China, who are a bit ahead of us, and the US. But I think now Europe's rapidly catching up to e-commerce, and I'll probably be thinking more along an e-commerce only strategy to start with. That doesn't just mean your own website, but other places you can buy online from the likes of Amazon and other players in the market. So I'll probably be thinking more along those lines initially than trying to get your products on shop shelves.
Yeah. How does that pitch kind of work in terms of obviously going in, and again, you write brilliantly about this in the book and really sort of walk through your experience, but how did you, was it like another Dragon's Den pitch in terms of going into John Lewis? Is it that kind of feel? Like, just talk us through that quickly, Rob.
No, it was, I mean, don't get me wrong, I used to, when we had to pitch our products at university, I'd be sweating buckets, the most nervous person in the room. But then having gone through the business and having to pitch my ideas and present as a design consultant, you just got to put yourself through that mill and get better at it. And then when it was my business, you know, most nerves fell away because it was my product that I just wanted to get out there. So yeah, I think you go through a journey where if you're a nervous type person, you can grow the skill set to come across really confidently.
Yeah.
But yeah, pitching in John Lewis was just a kind of a business meeting where there was a great opportunity, and I was just really focused on trying to get it across the line.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier on that you found out that you had dyslexia when you was at school. So many people that I interview have become really successful entrepreneurs say the same thing. Have you found that there's been a benefit to having dyslexia? I mean, is it from a creative point of view of you, or certainly in your exposure to other entrepreneurs as well? Just talk through that. How have you controlled the negative side of it, and have there been, you know, benefits from it as well, Rob?
Yeah, well, certainly know a lot of entrepreneurs who are dyslexic, and many a famous one too. It obviously has unleashed various areas of creativity for me that a lot of other people don't get access to.
Yeah.
And I am quite fairly well known for thinking outside the box, so to speak, and just looking at things slightly differently. As far as the hindrance of dyslexia, is primarily spelling.
Yeah.
And modern technology allows spell checkers and things. So most of my communication only have a few spelling mistakes and aren't completely illegible.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, but personally, I prefer to listen to audiobooks than to read them, but I can happily read them. It's just, I'm always too busy to sit down and read a book. So
yeah. You've spoken a lot in the past about the importance of being self-critical, and also by surrounding yourself around people that will give you honest feedback. Tell us about that.
I think from the very early days, I realised I had a great product, but to get the business to the next level, I was going to need a great team around me because I can't do everything. And I was certainly very stretched in those early days. And I didn't really have any problem with delegating as long as people are better than me at doing whatever I'm delegating. So, but in those early days, you didn't have the budget to recruit the A team. It was just trying to find really passionate people who believed in what you were doing and giving them the responsibility, chucking them in the deep end. And I suppose it's still a thing we do today. A new recruit is quite often put in the deep end, and we all help each other out. And although the business card might say one thing, we're quite capable of stepping across the line and helping someone out and understanding all the aspects of the business to be able to sort of be multidisciplinary to some extent.
Yeah. And you mentioned about being self-critical. Is that something you're obviously really honest with yourself, and you write this in the book, and surrounding yourself with those honest people as well. Is that kind of a culture that you've bred within the company in terms of having this transparent comm style where everyone's honest with each other? Is that something you've intentionally had to do?
Yeah, I suppose it probably stems from the product design process. I mean, you can't be too precious about ideas in product design. And you've got to have an awful lot of ideas that get shot down in flames to have one good one. So having that mindset of not being too precious about what you're contributing, and being open to how that can be adapted. So with product design, with coming up with products, you kind of get feedback from either focus groups or consumers or prototypes, and things always have to iterate and change. Yeah. So there's that inbuilt understanding that that is the way you evolve a product. So within business, that's got to change too. You're going to start off with one idea and it's going to end up looking like this rather than that. Yeah. And you've gone through multiple steps of getting people's feedback, finding out what the market thinks and changing it. So I guess that's probably been the driving force of the culture in the business, that is kind of not putting anyone on a pedestal. Everyone's ideas are valid and ideas change and adapt and evolve to be different beasts, but you may have come up with that initial idea or you may have contributed to it, but everyone kind of can feel proud to help finesse that idea through to whatever is implemented in the end.
Yeah. Although your Dragon's Den experience was a long time ago now, I remember one thing that hurt for you at the time was that you delegated the manufacturing of the strap clip that Theo broke to someone else. How has this influenced how you delegate to people within your business now?
It's an interesting way to come at it. I mean, I kind of do delegate, but I don't try to look over people's shoulders. I don't always check. I guess it all comes down to the end result of what's being presented and trying to stress test whatever it might be that's presented back and being relatively confident in it. But if there is the odd hole or mistake, then it's nothing to be pulled up against. It's just maybe you found that through not being so close to something, so you can see it, whereas someone who's done it is too close. But I don't know. So I don't think it has that incident hasn't really affected me as much as you may think.
Yeah. You have moved the manufacturing of Trunki to the UK. Tell us why and how that has worked out for you guys.
Well, it seems to be working out more and more at the moment. But yeah, it's always a long-held dream to be able to make in Western Europe rather than China. And there was a period in, I think, 2009 where the US dollar massively appreciated against sterling, and all of a sudden our products were something like 20% more expensive because when you're buying from China, you're buying in dollars. So that kind of triggered me to think about, can we make things in the UK? And also the shipping costs are always changing. And actually, what is your final landed cost price? It's really hard to calculate because there's so many moving parts. Yes. And also the lead time. We couldn't keep up with demand with John Lewis for 3 years because they couldn't forecast the demand. Yeah. No one could have done. Yeah. And 120 days to get product from China to the UK, from ordering it to making it to shipping it. So lots of challenges around that supply chain. So I wanted to solve that problem, and that seemed like making it in the UK. And we're able to find a vendor who was able to quote a very good price to make it in the UK. We had quite a few problems in 2012 with them, setting up with them. And at the end of the year, they actually went into administration. But I decided to buy the factory out of administration. Being a product designer, I understand manufacturing reasonably well, not how to run a factory, but and it was a passion of mine to see that a lot of the customers that they already had that we could keep, we could encourage more reshoring, and there are lots more businesses who are looking to bring production back to the UK. So on paper, or at least in the head, it made sense. And we saved 40 odd jobs as well. Yeah. But it was quite a hard process to turn that factory round because it went bust for a reason. And we really had to change essentially the culture down there to being one of being proud rather than it just being a way of earning some money.
Yeah.
I guess that was the main turning point. But then with Brexit and sterling being massively depreciated against the dollar and euros, it's been very cost effective for us throughout that Brexit period of negotiation. And now we're going through COVID. We're really able to manage our supply chain really tightly because the demand isn't as what it was previously. And we can turn that demand right on as soon as we bounce back out of this as well. So we'll have the availability of inventory really quickly to bounce back. So all in all, it's been a really rewarding project to do, but also it's made a lot of business sense, although a lot of accountants would be looking at the numbers saying it hasn't, but now it certainly has.
Yeah. As a designer of something unique, how have you managed to protect your brand from copycats and fakes?
It's quite a big question, that one. It seems a simple one, but so I guess to start off with, most people are familiar with patents or the name a patent, and a patent effectively protects the way something works, not the idea itself. So you cannot patent the idea of a ride-on suitcase. You can patent the way the wheels might connect in a very clever, unique way. Well, actually, our catches now are all made of plastic, and they are patented, and they're quite a clever way of working. So I couldn't patent the product, but patenting costs an awful lot of money too. Yeah. So that money that I didn't have in the first place, I didn't waste on patenting. I invested whatever money I had on marketing. What I did have was a design registration, which protects the shape of the product and what it looks like. Because it was quite a unique, well, completely unique product in the market. There was no real reference point for a ride-on suitcase. There was luggage and ride-on toys. Yes. And somehow I managed to pencil the idea of the Trunki and what it looks like behind me. So anyone coming along to copy it ended up copying our design more than anything else because they didn't know how else it should look. Yeah. So our design registration was very powerful in protecting that across Europe and further afield. And we've had probably over must be 30 copies now. Initially, they're exact copies that looked exactly like our product. We were able to get those taken down. And then the manufacturers, primarily in the Far East and China, would just start making various bits bigger and smaller to try and make it look different, rather than think what the concept should be. So I liken these next level of copies to imagine Trunkies inbreeding around the Chenovel area, and you get these bastardized, weird-looking products that no one really wants to buy because they're so ugly. And then with us creating this whole category of ride-on suitcase, which never existed before. Now some more people have come in and started making products that don't look anything like ours, that we don't have the protection around, but that's all fair game because they're helping build the awareness of the category.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thanks so much for taking the time and having this interview today. Really enjoyed speaking to you today. Do you have any closing thoughts? And also let the listeners know where they can keep in touch with you and follow your journey.
Yeah, firstly, check out the book.
Yes.
In here I talk about my backstory, about my Trunki journey, but it's using really key insights into psychology and taking apart some of the decision making I made, and really giving you the tools to help navigate adversity and be more resilient. Yeah. It's actually quite a poignant book to launch, and we launched it last year, so right in the thick of lockdown. So yeah, check out the book, and I'm on Instagram and Twitter as @TrunkyDaddy. And some passing thoughts, I guess, would be, we're going through a lot of challenges at the moment, and there's a lot of uncertainty in how things are going to look on the other side. And it's really that navigating this storm we're in, you've got to have a lot of resilience and energy. And to get through it, you've got to focus on what you can control and not what you can't. So a great example of that is because I've got CF, I got the letter from the government saying you're critically extremely vulnerable and you shouldn't leave your front door indefinitely. So how do you deal with something like that, let alone the challenges for the business? And that's about having gratitude for the things you do have. So taking great pleasure in the kids. Amazing. We've got a a great garden, so hugely grateful for that, and for a decent coffee machine.
Yeah.
But beyond that, it's kind of don't think about it too much. And then really focus on what you can control. So I can't control when lockdowns are going to be eased, but I can make my product and brand more relevant to the current situation. And I think a lot of it, from a marketing point of view, is about relevancy.
Yeah.
Always being relevant to the customer.
Yeah.
And we're seeing customers change a lot now, shopping more online, so being more relevant to them there.
Yeah.
But with these challenges and these big transformational processes we're going through, there are opportunities. So trying to seek out those opportunities to really get on the other side.
Yeah. Well, Rob, thanks again. We're going to make sure that we've got the links to your book and to your social media and to the website for Trunki and for yourself in the description below. Thanks again for your time, Rob. Really enjoyed it.
Cheers, David. Thanks.